Accelerate OC, the only show focused on the people leading innovation in Orange County. Join our host, Kerry Ransom, in his conversations with the trendsetters, entrepreneurs, investors, and leaders here, because it's time to Accelerate OC.
Good morning. Welcome to Accelerate OC. I'm Kerry Ransom, and thanks always to our engineer Paul for making me and my guests sound so good. Today's episode is sponsored by OC4 Ventures, a new venture studio that I'm a part of here in Orange County. And we are identifying the most exciting and promising tech entrepreneurs here and trying to support them with a whole range of things such as capital, coaching, collisions with great talent, and connecting them into our community. Those are our 4 C's of OC4. And if you are one of those entrepreneurs, or if you know one, Neel, if you know anybody, send them my way, or you can go to oc4v.com. I am really excited to have Neel Grover here with me today. And before we get to hear from Neel, his amazing career, he's been here and done some really important work in some well-known companies here. And we'll talk about his current venture, Indi, as well. Let me tell you a little bit about Neel. So he's currently, as I said, he's CEO and founder of a company called Indi, and it's a software platform focused on video to help brands engage their customers. And he'll tell us a little bit about how he started it, but has also split it now into 2 different ventures, which isn't uncommon that an entrepreneur pivots, but the idea that he split it into 2 companies is somewhat unique. So we'll talk a little bit more about that today. And before that, he was CEO of a couple very, very well-known e-commerce companies, one called Bluefly, and then another one here in Orange County that many people will recognize called Buy.com. He also has been a board member for a number of other companies, an advisor to companies, as well as private equity firms. He also, interestingly, started his career as an attorney. And so we'll talk a little bit about how he was pulled out of a historically well-known law firm called Broback to get into the tech startup world. So he's been in here, as I said, he's been in Orange County for a while. He's a great local graduate of UC Irvine. And he's an example, like many of the guests of Accelerate OC, of what I would call a world-class leader who was raised here in our backyard. Neel, it's great to have you here.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's get to the starting line here at Accelerate OC. Tell us about Indi and how it came to be the next venture that you're now working on.
Sure. So when I left e-commerce, really, I ran Buy.com for about 11 years. We sold Buy.com, ultimately sold it to a company called Rakuten. They were like the Amazon of Japan, about a $20 billion company. I ran Rakuten North America for about 3.5 years, and I decided to start my own business, just seeing all the changes in digital media. Originally started focusing on the next big brand, which I really believe is the individual, hence the name Indi. And so really wanted to build something around individual commerce. So there's e-commerce, there's video commerce, and really make individual commerce. As we started building that, kind of paused it, and that's what got going on the brand side. And so I'm going to talk about that first, and then we'll talk about the spin out later. Because we ultimately built basically 2 businesses inside of one, kind of incubated one for a while, and now we're running both. But really what we saw as the opportunity was over the last 7 to 10 years or so, every brand and retailer has said, thank you for shopping with me, thank you for having coffee with me, thank you for some type of direct customer relationship. Now go engage with me in social media, which made a lot of sense, back in the years. And every head of marketing was really kind of rewarded on how big their social following was. Everyone was given discounts to move everyone over, and made a lot of sense because you had free flow of information on social. Everyone was there. They didn't have to get your emails. You would just post it. They would see it. It was great. Well, that's changed dramatically in the last year. And still a lot of people don't realize that, but we saw that happening about 3 years ago. We knew that was going to happen. And so we really started focusing on how do we help brands of all sorts engage their customers directly in their own website or in their app rather than just on social media, where they have a direct relationship. They own the content that gets submitted. So we built a content management system for user-generated content. So you can actually get your customers to upload a photo or video to you. And having that social proof is so beneficial for a brand or a retailer, but today it all lives in social. And you don't own any of it. It all belongs to Facebook and Instagram and others. So we really wanted to change the paradigm and say, you know what, brands need to start owning that relationship with their customer, regain it directly. And then we went from there. We decided to really turn your customer into your ambassador, and really, and that's where the fun really began.
So if I take that as, let's go just a little bit more into an example, because that takes me in a whole bunch of directions. Do the brands now sort of set up their own mini social media sites in an idealized world for them? Do the consumers just engage with the brand on a hub and spoke basis, or do you try to create, the birds of a feather sort of scenario where the individuals are now interacting with the brand, sort of sponsoring it with each other? So
all great comments and points.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a couple examples. So BB, the fashion retailer, BB utilizes our SaaS platform, so it's our software as a service platform, to one, get their customers to upload photo and video testimonials. So on top of the text reviews that they already upload, you could see Susie from Ohio say, "I love this dress," or you can actually see Susie wearing the dress, doing a video showing how she wears the dress, out with it, how well it fits her, how great it is, and have that right there on the product page where you pick and choose which photos and videos you want to load. Your customers feel great. They've gotten hundreds of submissions in the last month. And so that's first and foremost, just getting your customers to give you that content. Then what we said was, well, geez, we want to have your customer drive your sales. We believe your best influencer is your existing customer or your employees. So in BB's case, they pay a commission, as do several retailers we work with. They pay a commission to their customers to now drive a sale for them. So what we do is we pull in their product catalog. When their customer uploads a photo or video of their outfit, they then attach what product they were wearing or using, and then they get a personalized micro affiliate link tied to them. And now when they go share that content and that link into their own social media, they're a performance-based influencer. So just for commissions only, not large dollars. I'm not a huge fan of influencer marketing the way it's set up today. But I believe that, again, if you can get real, authentic, organic content created on your behalf, your customers are your best advocates. And it's driven well into six figures of sales very quickly because customers are talking about how much they love their products and telling their friends about it.
Very cool. So in that case, they are still, instead of BB really building its own social network, they are still leveraging existing audience networks.
They do.
They're just, it's the reach is coming not from what many would view as a nameless, faceless brand. It's coming from true, real,
exactly,
as you said, micro influencers.
And the thing is, social networks have cut off that reach for brands. So organic reach as we knew it 2, 3, 5 years ago, again, if you have 100 followers, 2 years ago, 100 people would see that post if you posted it. Today, less than one sees it on Instagram, and about a quarter to half sees it on Facebook. And so
without paying.
And that's why that was the key phrase right there. So the social networks have said, thank you for moving everyone over. They're now part of our network. If you want to reach them and show them anything, you got to pay us. And so ad prices have continued to skyrocket because of that. Organic reach is dead, but you need to be seen in social. And so what we really do is help you be seen in social through people that already have your product and love it. And so it's really your customers, your employees. And if you are using influencers, use your influencers to do this as well, and you can make it much more performance-based.
Very cool. So we've got a few things to talk about for sure. One of the things that I love to talk about on Accelerate OC, because I focus on innovators and entrepreneurs here in Orange County. And, part of why I started this was because we have so many people here with amazing stories to tell and not enough places for them to tell them. And I know we talked a little bit about in the early days of Indi, you shortly after starting it went into the Cove over at UCI, and Richard Sudek's been on here as one of my prior guests, but went in there and really built the early days of the company inside the Cove. Tell the audience about that experience as a way to really tap into Orange County.
Yeah, so Ken and Don Beal are investors in my company, and Ken asked if I would join the board of the Cove, and I said, yeah, great, but if I'm going to do that, I want to actually experience it.
Sure.
I spent a lot of time early on with TechSpace, and I love the co-working space, and so moved the company in there. We actually had a couple offices in there, and I loved it. I'd still be there today if we didn't move in with our new investors. Sure. But I think it's a great place. I think, Richard and UCI, I'm very connected with UCI. Really want to make that the hub of Orange County technology, and I think they're doing a great job with it. The Beals have put more into it, and now it's called the Beal, Applied Innovation Center. And I think it's a fantastic place to congregate, to meet new people, to find other entrepreneurs. And they have so many great events going on to really help, as you're learning, going through the discovery phase of what you need to do, that you can find out a lot there.
Yes, for sure. And I think that's a great summation. I'll probably have to clip that and share that. I'm sure Richard would be happy with that. But great. And, their new facility now is incredible. And as you said, one of the key hubs of entrepreneurial activity here. And I think we need places like that.
We definitely need it, yes.
And, one of the, as you heard me say earlier, one of the big words that I use a lot, and I think I've seen it work better in other markets historically than Orange County, is collisions. And you have to be at a place like the Cove or a few other places here to really have those serendipitous collisions happening on a day-to-day basis.
We're a little more spread out than the Valley,
yes.
For sure, and even in pockets of LA where a lot of the entrepreneurial activities are happening. And so I think we have to do everything we can to almost unfairly advantage ourselves to
right.
Help everyone out.
That's right. And we will talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So we talked a little bit off the air, but you have split the company into sort of two different focus areas now. So explain to the audience kind of how that happened, and that you sort of were building two inside one to start, but that there are two distinctive focuses. And so you decided to make that decision. I mean, that's a tough call because, I feel like every entrepreneur, I had this discussion literally last night with an entrepreneur who was not willing to commit to either a direct-to-consumer business or a B2B business. And as I said, that lack of commitment is what may kill you.
Yeah. I mean, we're really excited about both sides of the business, but as I said, we started focusing around the individual, hence the name Indi. We saw the big opportunity with brands and what was going to happen to brands, with the social networks and the lack of engagement and direct connectivity, and what was going on with influencer marketing and how it needed to be more performance-based. But we had an opportunity to work with a great company called TRX. TRX has a couple 100,000 certified personal trainers, and we looked at the whole fitness space with what we're doing around individual monetization. And so we're really going to help every individual, whether you are, a celebrity or an athlete with millions of followers, or you are, a kid right out of college, right out of high school, who just has a great passion and knowledge about something, in all the ways in between. People have great knowledge. Have great passions that they can really help others with. I played college tennis, still play competitive tennis. People ask me all the time what racket to use, what shoes to wear. Well, retailers will pay for my recommendations. And so what we did over the last few years as well is we've connected technologically 1,600 plus retailers. We've pulled in a product catalog of over 50 million products, and we want to enable it so that anyone can make these recommendations and get paid for them. And so we call it Things I Love. You highlight the things you love. And so we're going to be doing that with several different groups of people that have large followings or large members, as well as really every individual. And then we're adding a lot of different video commerce pieces. So subscription commerce, other type of video pieces that'll come out into Q1. So we're really excited about that as well. But as we did that with a couple groups in the fitness space, we had interest to receive an investment around that vertical specifically. So we decided to spin the business off and have one that really just focuses around individual monetization, and then keep the other one separate that focuses around the brand side of the house.
Okay. So is the way to think about that where in the brand case, the brand is paying almost on a
They are. So the brand
like
pays,
a SaaS
they pay us a
fee,
SaaS
where
fee.
the other's more of a you're taking a piece of the transactions from the individuals.
Exactly. Exactly. Very sharp.
Yeah, I've been around a little bit,
Yes.
but that totally makes sense. I mean, and so as you think about now being CEO of both of those, and you probably at this point have some shared resource, but do you have sort of diverging plans that you see emerging, or
Yeah.
how you're thinking about your code base from a
Yeah, so we've
business?
actually separated our code base. I mean, this was a 6 months in the making separation. I'm technically not CEO of the individuals business. I'm chairman of that business.
Okay.
I'm CEO of the brand business. I separated my teams and brought in specific people for the new individual business. So we do have two different teams. We have some shared resources right now as some of the development's still going on, but overall very separate entities.
Okay, very smart. I look forward to tracking how this goes. And it seems like you're doing that fairly early on in the company's evolution, where often this probably happens a lot later than it maybe should.
Yeah, there were some other reasons I can't get into of why we had to do it now, but it just made a lot of sense to do it.
Sure.
and not get, I mean, as I said, we built these two, but we really weren't focusing on the individual one yet, although we had built all these partnerships with it. And so as these opportunities arose, it made total sense to do it right now and make sure that we could focus, get teams focused on both sides of the house quickly.
Okay. Well, let's go under the hood a little bit more here. So you've been at this now for a few years. What's been the biggest surprise in this business? As you said, you'd spent a long time in e-commerce. I like this individual commerce idea. Anything that's really gone differently than you expected, or surprises that you've seen?
I think on the brand side, I'd say it's been a little bit surprising to see how many brands still don't realize what social is doing to them. And everyone thinks social is just the greatest thing for them. Well, that used to be the case. Social is looking out for social. And yes, social media can absolutely help a brand get its brand bigger and known out there more. But the way that happens today is very different than it happened 6 months ago and a year ago and 5 years ago. And a lot of brands haven't changed yet. And so we look at that still as a great opportunity for us. And, we've got some great brands now that are working with us, Bye Bye Baby, Bed Bath & Beyond, Coach, BB, as I mentioned, and a lot of smaller. I mean, we take it from if you've got one customer, that customer's got 350 friends that they can tell them about. So from all across the board, but still today, seeing that brands are thinking, one, that social media is going to be the savior, where it really costs them now a fortune. Mary Meeker came out last year with this last year with her internet report saying, brands really need to focus to make sure that the lifetime value of a customer is greater than customer acquisition costs, because brands are spending so much on customer acquisition costs now. So we really help with that as well. That's probably been the biggest, thing. And then on the individual side, we just see so much opportunity because, again, individuals continue to utilize social to drive this big following, but they're not able to monetize it quite well. And so we really want to make it so every individual can monetize their following.
Totally makes sense. What new data are you guys producing for these brands that maybe you talked about the CAC to LTV challenge that I think most companies have at least tried to figure out how to calculate that. Maybe some of these brands have been slower than the pure SaaS startup world that I tend to spend more of my time in, where that is just almost religion from the get-go. But is there new data, I would imagine, that you're bringing about either customer segments or other ideas that they haven't been able to figure out themselves?
Yeah, I mean, we're pulling a couple things for them. So one, they first of all find out which of their customers are actually driving real traffic and driving sales. So whether it's an influencer, an employee, or a customer, they're only paying on performance. So they can give something out if they want to. They can give discounts or promotions. But more importantly, if you get thousands of your customers to upload content, first of all, you own all that content. They give you a license to that content, which is hugely valuable. Two, no matter how much they're sharing and talking about it, you're really only paying them on performance. So unlike in a traditional influencer marketing relationship where you pay a flat fee whether or not their followings are real, whether or not those followers engage with your brand or not, here you're only paying on direct sales. So they love the cost structure. And then we pull a lot of data from the APIs from all the different social networks. So they know how much traffic and engagement each individual is driving from which platform, all with full permissions and GDPR compliant and, with, again, with full permissions from your customers.
And I would imagine that some of these brands that are working with you previously or maybe in parallel are doing bigger name influencer type campaigns and probably seeing radically different results, right? Because most of those aren't, from at least my experience, and I don't have nearly as much as you, aren't as performance based.
They're not. The vast majority, if not all of them, are not done performance based. And if you've got a great influencer that's working with you, like that's tremendous. Keep working with them. I've always thought that celebrities and athletes, they will always get their pull. That's what they've done, and they're very protective of it, and they're very cautious in how they do it. Where things have gone a bit awry is because the market's unregulated. It's very easy to go buy 50,000 or 500,000 followers tomorrow for a few $100s. So are you really getting that? And then secondly, even if you do have a real following, you have to be very authentic and true to who your followers are. There are big names influencers out there, for example, recently have said, oh, this teeth whitener is the reason why my teeth are so white. And then the fans call them, or the followers call them out and say, wait a minute, you got veneers put in. And so they kind of forget some of the things they've said, and that loses the authenticity. But again, you've got great advocates in your customer base who really love your product, and your employees, et cetera. And so just finding that right connection is so beneficial.
Yes, for sure. So let's move a little bit here. So you've been CEO of several companies, including at least part of Indi still. What do you enjoy about being a CEO?
Creating great teams is one of my biggest passions. I played college tennis here at UCI. I was captain of the team for a few years. And just pulling a team together, especially when you're doing something that, people don't believe you can do. At Buy, we were quite the underdog against Amazon. When I first went in the company, we were losing close to $100 million a year. We had a great small team. I mean, we took the team from 600 some down to 80 some people initially. Wow. And still doing a few $100 million in revenue, but we had to grow that profitably, and we did lots of things differently, and it took every single person on the team to think differently and to come up with ideas. And it didn't matter what your role was in the company, but you had to come up with some suggestion of how we could do things better, create a better experience for our customers, and create that stickiness where they didn't want to just default go to Amazon. And thankfully, it worked, and we went from losing $100 million a year to 13 consecutive profitable quarters. But it was having a great team, and that's what I really love about it. I've had great partners, great teams, members, many of which still work with me today. So I've been very fortunate.
That's awesome. So you started out, as I said earlier in your intro, as an attorney at a fairly storied firm, certainly back in the heyday of Internet 1.0, Brobeck. And, even the office here in Orange County was a very, very well-known, well-regarded office. What led you to sort of venture from the legal world to the startup tech world?
I actually went into law wanting to go into business. And so I, when I was everyone in my family is a physician, so I kind of had to go to grad school somewhere.
So you weren't going to be a doctor.
And I started off pre-med, but then tennis was taking up too much time, so I switched. And ultimately said, I can either go get my MBA or go into law school. I really wanted to go to law school. I thought it would be a great background to have. I actually didn't mean to practice. I thought maybe at most I'd practice for a year. I first started at Jones Day, and then I moved over to Brobeck, and I really enjoyed what we did. We worked with great companies. I was here in Orange County. We had a great team members, folks I worked for and folks I worked with.
Had to be a great era too.
It was. Yeah. And, at the end of the day, we were fortunate to have, great people wanting to go there. So it was, who do you want to work with at 3 a.m? Because we did work a lot at 3 a.m. Sure. And so we had great people that we worked with, some of my best friends still today. And, we worked with a lot of amazing companies. So I meant to only do it for a year. I did it for about 3.5. Some of the best experience I've had. I feel like it helps me every day in what I do. But a lot of the attorneys at Brobeck were actually very involved in the deal structures and actually the actual businesses, not running it per se, but very involved in the businesses. And so you'd see a lot of folks leave and go in-house or take operating roles at companies. And I was very fortunate to be in the right place in the right time and have that opportunity happen with Buy.com.
Yeah, there's definitely a Brobeck alumni group around here, and I've worked or have friends that I count amongst a bunch of those. So
Yeah, tremendous
very,
people.
very
And
cool.
and it's not just Brobeck. There's other firms as
Sure.
well that
Yes.
that have done the same thing. But we're very fortunate.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's part of the legacy of Orange County, or some of those times and places and experiences. I mean, Buy.com and the alumni that you have there,
Correct.
some of which, as you said, are still with you today. I think that is what often successful companies start from, that kernel of a group that has shared experience and high trust, and can build from there. And even some of the things that we look at as we're looking to invest in new startups, we often really lean when we see, oh, okay, this group has done something meaningful together before, they're ready to do it again. That's often a good start, or can be.
Right. Correct.
So you've been here for a while, as I said. You've had some great success. How do you think the audience that predominantly listens to Accelerate OC are people really keen on how do we continue to make Orange County a great innovation business community? How do you think about life as a tech entrepreneur here in Orange County?
So personally, I love it here. I've lived here for 40 years, and I don't want to leave. I think, I look at it like we have an advantage being down here rather than being in LA or being in the Valley. And that's because it's not as competitive for talent once you get
Sure.
them here. Up in other areas, people move a lot because it's very easy for them to move from one company to another.
And many of my friends say they feel like all their employees up there are 1 foot out the door every day.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, there's always a brand new hot something newer than what you are. And sometimes you've got to, be able to get through those tough times and make sure your team's excited about it, and it just makes it a little bit easier when every time they're going out for coffee, they're not getting
Sure.
a new offer. But what makes it tough here is we are a little more spread out. There's not that much capital here. There's still not the attitude as much, I don't believe, of it's okay to go start something.
Yes.
And it's okay if you don't succeed, per
Yes.
se, quote unquote, in that first or second or 10th opportunity. Just keep going for it. And I think we need to get that more. I think that's happening more and more as there are more successes. I think one of the biggest things that we really need to do, though, is continue to foster that. And what you're doing here is tremendous. What Richard at the Cove is doing, what the Beals are doing, what Peter Polidor is doing, what all these different folks are doing is all really, really beneficial to the ecosystem. But I still feel like the big and the small need to work better
Yes.
together. And we need to, I was fortunate to run one of the bigger, at least internet companies, probably the biggest internet company in Orange County for a while. But we need to always be looking at how does the big help the small.
That's right.
And unfairly advantage our own community.
Oh, could not agree more.
Everywhere else does that. The Valley does that. They look for people there all the time. They look for companies to work with there all the time. I believe LA is doing that, within their own, micro community. And we really need to do that here as well. And not to say that, you shouldn't be getting relationships everywhere, but it's easier for me to get a meeting with someone, literally a senior exec at Walmart, a top 2 or 3 person at Walmart, than it is in one of the larger companies here that I don't know. And I know a fair amount of people here. I just think we need to really structure this where smaller companies can get an opportunity to work with bigger companies, whether it's a pilot, feedback, some type of an assessment, some type of communication with larger companies to really help the whole community out.
Yes. And what do you, let's go a little bit deeper on that, because this is an area that I have a tremendous passion about. And I think we have the time and place. We have a large number of the big company CEOs now gathering together, and I think open more than they've ever been to how can they be helpful. And so as you think about that, right, you're a accomplished and I would say connected entrepreneur and executive here, but for the people who aren't, let's say a relatively new graduate out of UC Irvine, or somebody who's just decided to go try to make it as an entrepreneur, what do you think we can do as a community to really create that connection? Because I think, to your point, in some cases you just don't know. Like if you're trying to get a meeting at Pacific Life or Ingram Micro or Experian or one of the larger companies here, who do you go to?
Yeah.
And even knowing where to start and maybe even those companies aren't organized in a way to where they know. Even if you know somebody there, they may not know who to go to. So how do you think about what we could meaningfully try to do in 2020? Because I'm willing to take this one up as a personal challenge as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking of different ways. I mean, one, I think the different locations like the Cove, like Richard could set up something more formal, which I know he's talked about doing different things already there, but doing it more formal where, maybe every startup in Orange County can, propose 3, big companies they'd like to do a pilot for.
Sure.
And then you go to the flip side and go to the bigger companies and say, hey, here's some different startups. Would you give them a half an hour to pitch to you? And maybe they take 5 every 3 months. They talk to someone at the company, talks to you for 30 minutes or so, and figure out if there's somebody to do something with. And it doesn't have to just be that one group. I'm in YPO. I could, definitely see how we could do that with Info YPO.
Sure.
Same type of thing. So I think there are some different ways where we have connections of the largers and the not so large. And the great thing is a lot of times that's where the innovation for the larger companies can come is by looking at in their own backyard and saying, hey, look, it would take maybe something you could build eventually, but you haven't yet. So why don't you start by helping one of these companies out and it could help you out as well. And kind of being on both sides of it, I really see how it could really benefit, I think, everybody in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I had an interesting experience. I was in Experian a few years ago in a role there, and a lot of my friends from the entrepreneurial community said, "Hey, we got a friend over there now. Let's see what we can do." And I think part of the challenge that I encountered in the probably couple dozen startups that I introduced in there was that the entrepreneur's expectation was, "Hey, this is going to be my opportunity for a pilot or a customer or feedback or something," and they were often able to get the meeting because I could be that broker, but the time horizon, the expectations often mismatch because the leader at Experian, and I think this is the case in many other companies, maybe doesn't have the mandate to do something near term. Yeah, they're looking at this year's P&L. Often a startup's not going to help with that, and so it doesn't really materialize other than maybe some meetings. Yeah, and so I think part of what we have to probably do as people have been on both sides is to show both sides the value. Yeah, that one needs to, they need to meet each other. It's probably not the answer to every entrepreneur's validation or funding dream, but it also the bigger companies, to your point, they need this. They most of them are just not equipped because they don't have the right people or the right incentives to do innovation. And so I would love to take this one as one. We'll partner on and carry the torch.
Meet
on
back
here.
For coffee to go over this.
For sure. So, as you think about Orange County in the next decade, what do you think are the areas that we as a community, beyond what's obvious, let's say like life science and ophthalmology and areas that groups like UCI and Octane and others have really focused on, what are areas you think we should be thinking about as an innovation community to consider as focus areas?
Well, I think I'll answer that two ways. One, I think gaming will be a big one for us here, both with, what Oculus has done, with all the big gaming companies here, with UCI having degrees in gaming, scholarships there, esports, gaming, all really important. But I really want to see it not where there's just pockets. I want to see it across the board. There's no reason why we can't have several e-commerce companies. There's no reason why we can't have folks in really every facet of startups, happening here, and that's what I'm excited about. I don't want to be just biotech or just XYZ. I really want to build the whole community up where this is a very, very exciting community that's thriving with startup activity.
I love that vision, and you mentioned this earlier. This idea that you may not make it on your first one or your second one or your fifth one, but keep going, and that we need to. And I've talked to some other longtime entrepreneurs here that really say we don't have that embrace of a culture of failure or try again, and often people feel isolated or cast aside if they don't succeed, and we need to pick them up and support them. So
absolutely,
I think that's something that we have been here for a while, need to just keep saying it's okay.
Yeah. Yep.
What did you learn? Be a good mentor.
We should celebrate
coach.
the people that are trying.
That's right.
Rather than just the few that have had the outcomes, celebrate everyone that's trying, because I think
right.
it takes a lot of courage to do something different like that.
For sure. It's hard. I mean, Paul and I have talked a lot about how, a lot of guests come in here and say, bing, bang, boom, I raised $100 million and I had my big exit. And that's just not the norm.
Leaving out a couple details.
And, there usually are a few, tough things. It's always great to show, I think, for hope and optimism to see those successes.
Absolutely.
But people feeling safe to be vulnerable about. I mean, I still draw on my biggest failure from 15 years ago every day as a key learning and motivator.
Yeah.
So I think we just need to be more open about that with the community. But I love the idea of celebrating the people for trying, because there's a big group. I've said for 10 years, I think there's a big group of latent entrepreneurs here who don't see a support system, don't see a safe place, and so they go back to their job versus pursuing what could be the mark they could leave on the world, or their opportunity to dent the universe.
Yeah.
So anything else about Orange County that you really appreciate?
I mean, I think we've got great people, and I think that's important, because ultimately it starts with good people in any company you work for or work with. And I do think we've got tremendous people here that want to do great things. And I think the tide is changing. I think there are great leaders here. I think the schools are actually actively, asking their students to go do different things. I had been asked to give the commencement speech a couple years ago at UCI for the engineering department, and I asked the dean, I said, I'm not an engineer, granted I'm a graduate here, but why do you want me to speak? He goes, I want students to know it's okay to go take a chance, go do something different.
That's awesome.
You don't need to go get the big corporate job day one. Now's the best time, not necessarily the age that you're at, Neel. So, it's good to see that. It's really, there are more and more people really pursuing this and promoting it. And I think that's, what we really need.
That's great. So what's ahead for Indi in 2020?
Hopefully big things. Lots of retail relationships on the one side, and lots of individuals finding their own ways to monetize that they haven't been able to do. And we'll have a new app launching the end of Q1 that'll have a lot of different features that aren't out there today to really drive individual commerce. So really excited about both of them.
That's awesome. So what can we do as the Orange County community to support you and help Indi? I mean, that's a big part of what this audience, they're getting more and more activated to want to help. So
wow.
how can we?
Can I hear that again?
How can we be helpful?
No, that's great. I mean, if there's any brands out there, retailers that sell direct to consumer, would love to speak to them on how we can help them drive, deeper engagement with their customers, get that user-generated content for their sites, those testimonials that, oh, by the way, Amazon has defaulted to on their site, seeing significantly higher conversions with user-generated videos and photos there. And then turn your customers and employees into, to brand advocates and drive sales. And so if you are direct-to-consumer at all, feel free to reach out to sales at Indi or to me at Neel at Indi.
Or me.
Or to you, Carrie. Yeah. And, that would be much appreciated. And if you're interested on the individual side to help, really create something new in the commerce world, let us know. And, we're excited to work with you. I'm
certainly ready to sign up and see how much this audience will actually listen to me.
I'm sure you've got great recommendations.
So one of the things, final lap here, one of the things I always ask my guests is kind of a final thought, words of advice or key lesson that you've learned. What would you love to share? It's kind of a final thought with our audience here.
I'd say a couple things. I said, one, be persistent. If you really feel that you know what you're doing or that you've got a strong belief to do something, go until you can. Just keep going. If you need to pivot a little bit, feel free to pivot. But persistence across the board, whether that's in your belief or in finding advisors or finding capital or finding, some type of help or advice. Be polite, be respectful, but reach out to people that can help you. I think people here, like we said, the people here are great. They want to help. Sometimes their titles may look daunting. I know some people that I become very close friends with, who on paper I'm like, oh wow, they ran so and so, or they
Sure.
must be too busy to ever talk to me. And when you get down to it, everyone has the same questions, the same potential insecurities, the same, can I do this, when they're getting outside of their comfort zone. And so I think people really want to help. If people reach out to me, I'm very busy, but I'm always trying to find time to to meet and help, especially if they're here in Orange County.
That's awesome. Well, Neel, thank you so much for taking us on this ride today here at Accelerate OC, for sharing your experiences and your perspective on Orange County, and a little bit more about your current venture, Indi, and wish you all the success in the world with it. And just a reminder, you're definitely doing your part to accelerate Orange County. Welcome to the family.
Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate it. Thanks so much. You too. Thank you.
You've just listened to Accelerate OC. Join our live recordings every Tuesday morning at accelerateoc.com, or listen, like, and share anytime from your favorite podcast spot. Let's accelerate OC together.